So my job was every week I was with a different group of around 30 combat soldiers. I was usually the only girl in the shooting range. And I just taught soldiers how to shoot their guns. So I was qualified on 5 different guns. Shooting is a lot of fun. Hanging out with combat soldiers is a lot of fun. I had a great time. I'm really, really close with my friends from the Army still. They're some of my best friends. And I guess to kind of speak to a little bit why I joined the Army, but beyond just it was a rash decision that I made senior year, I really was looking for a really challenging experience and a really meaningful experience. And the way that looked for me was something that was going to push me completely out of my comfort zone, and that was the Army. And I honestly had no idea what I was getting myself into. Like, I spoke to my sister a little bit about it, but she was in a totally different job than what I was. And I spoke to whoever I could, but you kind of can't understand it until you're there. And basic training was a huge, huge shock to my system. It's really intense. The basic training that I was in is pretty much the most intense basic training for girls except for combat. And it was definitely intense. It was emotionally intense. It was physically intense. I felt really homesick all the time. My Hebrew was nowhere as good as it is now. And it was just a lot for me. And then after I got my basic training was for like all infantry weapons instructors generally. And then I got specialized into specifically shooting and marksmanship. And after I got put into that specialization and did my advanced training, I started to actually grow relationships because my Hebrew was at a much stronger place. And I was able to really connect with people beyond just the level of like, this is really hard and we're sad all the time and we never sleep. Like, relationships kind of got to another level where we were making jokes and we were eating together, and it wasn't as intense mentally and physically, and so we could kind of connect more. So I mean, I guess I'd say like the thing that I got out of the Army most are the relationships that I have and the people that I know, and those are definitely friends for life. After I finished the Army, I moved to Tel Aviv. I was working for a little while because I had like a gap between finishing the Army and starting school last September. So then I started Brown as a 20-year-old freshman, which I guess college is a little bit a ways away for you guys, but it was definitely weird being so far removed from high school, but like being with people who had just graduated when I started Brown. I have loved being at Brown, but I miss the Army every day. It was the most fun experience ever. And
I'm going to put your pictures up.
Yeah, go ahead.
And do you mind just sort of talking through them a little bit? And then I'm going to ask you some follow-up questions before we open it up.
For sure.
So give me 1 second. I'm just going to open up your... Sorry. Okay, let me just put it into... Great. I don't know. Hold on, let me just see. Yeah, so I don't know if these were in any particular order when you sent them, but if you could just see each one for a minute and just share what it is. And
Yeah, so I mean, even going through the pictures to find stuff to send to you guys like took me down memory lane and really made me miss the times in the Army. This first picture is with one of my absolute best friends in the Army. That's what a shooting range looks like. It's kind of hard to tell, but like if you see that little bump in the back, that's where you put the targets, and then like in front of us where you can't see is where we would like line up the soldiers, and then they would shoot towards the targets. So that's just one of my best friends. That's what in our job specifically, in most jobs, like usually when you see Israeli soldiers, you'll see that they're wearing those pants with like a collared green shirt. So in my job specifically as an instructor, one of like the fun parts about our job, one of the good parts about our job is that we get to wear t-shirts, which is like, well, we're well known for that. So that's what that is.
Cool. Oh, hold on. How do I change this from here? Sorry.
No, no worries.
Why won't it let me? Oh, because that was the last picture. Okay, sorry. I did in the opposite order. Go ahead.
So then this is a picture of me. So there's two versions of your uniform. There's your Madei Aleph and your Madei Bet. So Madei Bet is what you just saw me in the last picture. That's your like casual uniform kind of that you wear during the week. And then your Madei Aleph is what you would wear for any like official ceremonies or just when you're traveling outside of base. So this is me in my full uniform. If you see, like in the corner right next to that red tag that I have is a green string. Yeah, right there. So that anytime you see a soldier with a green string, that means they're an instructor. So that was after I finished my training, I got my green string for being an instructor. The red tag is for my like yechida, which is like my unit kind of. And then there's a lot of elements of the Israeli army that are a little bit silly because it's a lot of 18-year-olds together. And so like different parts of your uniform kind of signify different things. So the boots that I'm wearing are really the only other people in the army that wear these boots are actual combat soldiers. And they're red boots, which are like even more special. So it was fun for us that we got the red boots that combat soldiers get. And then behind me, it says Mador Kliya, which is, Mador is like kind of like unit, and then Kliya means shooting and marksmanship.
Cool. No, it won't let me do it again. Oh, hold on. Oh, because I wasn't clicked on it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. This is me and another one of my best friends from the army. This was my life. I got to shoot a lot of guns. And I mean, there's not much more to say there. That's just a fun picture of me kind of in
what it looks like a little bit closer up.
Yeah, exactly. This was me during basic training. So that's why I have those two, like the white and green on my shoulders. That means that you're like the youngest in the army. They literally call it Hachit Seira, like the youngest in the army. So that was me right at the beginning of my service. And you'll also notice that I have black boots instead of red boots because the red boots were only for my specialized unit, not for all infantry weapons instructors.
Before your big promotion.
Exactly. And then, I mean, this is like one of my favorite pictures ever. This is really what my life looked like. Like this was every week, these kinds of soldiers had to listen to me talk all week long and they had to kind of do what I told them, and we had a lot of fun. I created really close relationships with a lot of the soldiers that I trained, and they all are tired and don't want to be there and haven't slept and are eating army food, but like it was really important to me as an instructor to make the week that I spent with the soldiers a lot of fun. And so obviously like we have to take it seriously, and it's dangerous what my job was, like you're around guns, which are obviously dangerous. But I would just always try to keep a smile on my face and make jokes with them, make them laugh, make mistakes in my Hebrew that made them laugh, not on purpose. And then like sometimes at the end of the week, we would all take a picture together and just to kind of commemorate the week together.
Nice. Okay, I think that's the last one. Yeah. So can I just ask before we open it up to questions? And guys, if you have questions in a minute, I'm going to ask you just to raise your hand in Zoom, and I will spotlight you so you can ask the question. So I wanted to ask first, could you just take us through maybe like what a day in basic training looks like and what a day once you were out of basic training and your assignment looked like?
For sure. So a day in basic training, you never know when you're going to wake up. They bang on your door at whatever hour. So it could be 5 a.m. On a good day, it was 8 a.m. And they say you have 22 minutes to get in your uniform, brush your teeth, do whatever you need to do, and be standing in a chet, which is like literally the letter chet in like a formation, by 5:22, whatever it was. So everybody's going around. My basic training was like 120 girls all at once. So everybody's running around. There's like 4 sinks for 120 girls. We're all trying to brush our teeth and get ready and put everything together. No one has their phones on them. The only thing we have is our guns, which we would carry around guns during basic training, are like these little plastic water bottles that they give you, your uniform, and like a watch, because you always need a watch during basic training, because you always need to be, because they're always telling you have 4 minutes to do this, you have 2 minutes to do this, and you need to time yourself to make sure that you're doing it in the right time. And then they would make us do like clean the whole unit or whatever, and all being timed, and we wouldn't do it in the right time, and then we would have to run from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill and silly stuff like that. And then we would have meals, and most of my basic training, because it was basic training for infantry weapons instructors, was learning how to be an instructor. So it was basically like 3 levels. The first level was you would just give a class on, they would assign you like a topic, and then you would have to teach a class to your little kita, like your little class of people within the bigger group. And then the second level was they would teach a class and they would actually ask you questions. So you had to be prepared to answer questions on whatever you were teaching. And the third level was that you would teach a class and the officers and commanders would make it like impossible to get through the material. So they would literally like shoot you with water guns and play loud music and ask a lot of questions and be really annoying, so that you can experience kind of what it's like to teach soldiers, because there's a good chance that you'll get soldiers who are not listening, who don't want to pay attention, who are going to make it difficult for you to get through the material, and you need to learn how to kind of get through that.
I don't know anything about that teaching at SAR.
Yeah, it's not unlike that. And then in terms of what a day in the life looked like in a regular, like once I was in my job, we would usually wake up around like early, also probably like 7 or 8, go down to the shooting range. And basically how it worked is that whatever each instructor was assigned to a different shooting range, and you were in that shooting range for the whole week. So you had the same group of soldiers for the whole week. You were working with their commanders and their officers. And we weren't in charge of discipline. We were only in charge of like technical information. But so we have to kind of match expectations with the commanders in terms of like, we need them to be here at this time in order for us to get through all the material. So it was a lot of kind of being in the shooting range, doing different drills. So we would say, shoot 2 bullets and then go behind the wall and then shoot another 2 bullets and whatever. And we would explain what the drill was going to be. Then the soldiers would do the drill. We would go check the targets. We would come back. And there was a certain number of drills and a certain type of drills that every soldier had to complete in order to get his like certification by the end of the week.
Got it. Okay, I have a student who has a question, so I'm going to let her jump in, and then I'm going to spotlight her for a minute.
Okay, yeah.
Emma, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hey.
Thanks. I have a few questions, but I'll just ask one for now. So I wanted to know how you got put in the group that, like, in the topic that you were doing. So did you kind of get to choose what you wanted to try out for, or did they say, like, your capabilities put you in this area?
Sure. So there's kind of 2 levels to that question. First of all, like, how did I get put into infantry weapons instructors generally? And then how did I get put into shooting and marksmanship? So how I got put into infantry weapons instructors is that before you join the Army, you do this 1 day of testing basically called your Tzavrishon, where they test your language skills, they test your cognitive skills, they ask you questions about your home life and about your family and about what kind of things you like to do and all this stuff, and you get certain scores. I'm going to be honest, I don't totally know how the scoring works, but I got good scores, which makes you eligible for certain units and makes you not eligible for others. I was eligible based on my scores to be in the infantry weapons instructors course. And then because I was a volunteer, the process works differently for Israelis and for volunteers, but because I was a volunteer, I met with an officer who's like in charge of placing lone soldiers, in charge of placing volunteers. And I said, I've always wanted to be a weapons instructor. Like, this is my dream. This is how I want to serve. This is what I want to do in the Army. And then he was like, sounds good. You have the scores, you can have the job, basically. And then in terms of how I got placed into shooting and marksmanship specifically, you do this 2-month basic training, and then at the end they tell you what your placement is. And a lot of it is more so based on personality types than like skill sets. So, and it's, again, it's the Israeli army, so it's a lot of young people together kind of just feeling what your vibe is and where you fit socially and stuff like that. And my commander thought that I was a good fit for shooting and marksmanship, and she placed me there, and thank God she did, because the group of girls I was with was like really amazing, and still, as I said, some of my best friends still today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Emma, you can ask another one if you have another one.
Okay. Trying to think. I feel like I had so many questions as you were talking, and then I forgot.
I thought you can take a minute if you want. If anyone else has questions, you can raise your hand in Zoom. Emma, you think about it and put your hand up in Zoom, and I'll spotlight you again. I have a question which is kind of mundane, but all of our middle schoolers take Ivrit right now, and sometimes they feel like it's not the most important class. So I actually have 2 questions. So one is, first of all, if you could just talk about how your Ivrit was and how it got good enough that you were able to do this. And the other is to talk a little bit about whether when you were younger, like in middle school, did you have any idea that this was something you were going to want to do?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'll say when I was in 2nd grade, my family moved to Israel for a year. So I went to school in Jerusalem. I only spoke Hebrew because obviously I was young. So also like there really was no option but for me to speak Hebrew with other 8-year-olds. They really didn't know anything else. So I always had a strong base in Hebrew, and then kind of, I mean, me and Dahlia's older sister Yarden were always like, if we wanted to tell secrets or whatever, we would speak in Hebrew because we both had this like background of living in Israel for a little when we were younger. I also just part of my personality is I love languages. I was never big into chem or big into calc, but I love languages. I love humanities. And so I always focused on that because that's also my nature. Not necessarily because I knew I wanted to do the army. Like definitely when I was in 7th grade, I did not know what I wanted to do, let alone like for high school, let alone what I wanted to do for my gap year. But it was always something that was important to me just because of my personality and because of my background. In terms of how my Hebrew was when I got to the army, I'll like always remember literally on the bus to base to basic training, I was sitting next to this girl who was so sweet, and everybody was so nice to me because it was like this poor little American. She has no idea what she got herself into. And I was sitting next to this girl, and we were like, are we allowed to fall? It was like a 2-hour drive, and we like weren't sure if we were allowed to fall asleep on the bus or not. Like they were already getting us into that mode. And so I said to her, I was like, I'm gonna close my eyes, but wake me up if like I need to be woken up. And I said it in such broken Hebrew, I like won't even try to do it now. And she was like, do you want me to correct you if you make a mistake? I was like, yes, definitely correct me. I want to improve my Hebrew. And my friends now from the army feel very comfortable making fun of me for what my Hebrew was at the beginning of the army versus the end. Like I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but I always had a strong base, so I didn't have to do like any ulpan or anything like that before. But the nature of my job was standing in front of around 30 combat soldiers every day, every week. And we all know Israelis, we know they're not the most forgiving people on planet Earth. So if you're standing in front of them speaking broken Hebrew, they're just not going to listen to you. And it wasn't really an option for me. And then also I love the language. Hebrew is such a fun language to express myself in. I think that, I mean, my sister always jokes that I have like a different personality in Hebrew, but yeah, definitely my Hebrew improved.
Amazing. Okay, looks like Emma wants to get back in, so I'm going to spotlight you, Emma. You thought of it?
Yeah. So I wanted to know, did you ever like regret your decision or think that like it was too quick of a decision for you to go into the army?
Good question.
That's a great question. That's a really interesting question. So there were Definitely while I was in basic training, I was like, what am I doing? Why did I sign up for this? This is horrible. But that was also just short-sighted of me. Like, it's a hard time and everybody in basic training is like, this is horrible. During the Army, I didn't think that for a second. When I got to Brown, definitely ideas and ideology were challenged in a lot of ways that I hadn't been before. And obviously, like, I knew that there were going to be different opinions about Israel going into Brown, but it definitely forced me to think about it in a new way. I also would say, like, there were times my freshman year where I wished I weren't 20 and I wished I were 18 going into college. But in a bigger picture way, to answer your question, no, I do not regret it at all. It was such a formative experience for me. My leadership skills, my language skills, my team building skills, like, and on the most surface level, like, in terms of a resume builder, it is crazy advantageous. And in terms of the relationships that I built and in terms of the meaning that it has for me. And I think that, like, you'll leave SAR at some point in whenever, and you'll leave this world that is so kind of supportive of a lot of similar ideas, and you'll be challenged, and that's awesome. And I think challenging what you believe is great. And having background like I do has given me a lot more legitimacy to really know what I believe and to really be able to stand up for what I believe in and come from a place of knowledge and experience when I'm backing up kind of my ideas on whatever the issue might be.
Wow. Okay, I don't know, does anyone else have any other questions? I feel like I had another one too, Emma, and I forgot it when you asked yours.
Sorry.
It's okay. I was like totally at the tip of my tongue. Okay, I think we will, if no one else has any other questions, I think we are going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. This is so exciting to hear from one of our own who had this experience. Thank you for everything you did for Israel, for putting your life on the line for us and for obviously our homeland and something that we all hold so dear. So we really, really appreciate that. And for joining us on Yom HaZikaron and giving us an opportunity to really take some time out of our day and think about what the life of a soldier is like and appreciate both of the positive benefits of being in the Army and the sacrifice you had to make in order to do it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Hopefully one of these days when we're back at SAR, you can come visit us there.
For sure, for sure.
All right, take care.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Bye,
Thank you.
demonstrators.
Bye,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.